Well, good morning from Cottage Farmstead. I'm Rebecca, and it's another beautiful day here in South Carolina. And I thought I'd take you on another tour of our garden now that it is mid-July so that you can see how our garden is doing this year. So as I believe I shared in our previous garden tour back in June, we've had an unusually cool summer until very recently. We were having, 70s and 80s as highs in May and June, which is pretty unusual for us. We're usually in the 90s by that point. And so we didn't get into the 90s until pretty much the first week of July. So a lot of our crops have just started taking off where we usually would have been harvesting a bit earlier for things like green beans and pickling cucumbers and things like that. Because of the cooler weather that we were having, the main crop that really struggled with it was our tomato plants. And you can see they're pretty scraggly, not a lot of leaf growth. We had a lot of rain, which probably leached some of the nitrogen out of the soil on us. Trying to keep up with some fish emulsion just to keep them going, but we're not sure we're going to have a bumper crop of tomatoes this year, so we'll probably take advantage of some of the other local farmers that had a little bit more success with tomatoes this year for our own sauce needs. So even though we got the tomatillo plants in the ground at a good time to try and beat the worms that like to nibble on the fruit, the cooler weather just slowed them down so much. So now that they're fruiting in high season for the worm. And the worm that affects these is the same worm, I believe, is the silkworm that you get into your corn, and they're just everywhere. They love munching on them. So we have to use the tomatillos pretty quickly or try and freeze them if we want to make salsa, but we're not able to hold them in the fridge, and so pretty much they take a bite out of every single one of them on the plants. As you can see, it's been a really good year for our peppers. This is Glow, which is a hybrid pepper from Johnny's Seed. They're like a cross between a lunchbox and a bell pepper, so they're on the smaller side, but still delicious and sweet like a bell pepper. Across the aisle, we have our Carolina bell peppers, and they seem to be doing great this year. This one's just starting to blush, so it'll be ripening real soon for us. And all the plantains along this area are full of fruit, so we're really looking forward to a good pepper crop this year, even if our tomatoes aren't as amazing. So we're really excited about this pepper. It's the first time we've grown this variety. It's called Etuda, if I'm saying that correctly. It's a Polish variety of peppers that market gardeners grow over there, and it really seems to thrive. And we saw a review from someone that lived a county over from us and said they grew really well for her, and so far they're doing pretty great for us. So we're very excited to be able to taste our first one very soon. So in between the peppers, you can see that we have transplanted out some more lettuce successions out here. And so we have a couple different varieties mixed in here because the first round of lettuce that we planted has started bolting. So this will just give us more lettuce later in the season. So as you can see, our first round of lettuce has definitely gone to seed, and we are letting it do so as we like collecting as much seed as we can so we don't have to rebuy it every year. We also end up with some really cool mixed varieties that are always fun to see what pops up every year. And as you can see, the vine borer moth has finally found our squash, so we will not be having too many more squash off these plants as they're going to die pretty quickly on us, but we have really enjoyed the crookneck and zucchini and zephyr squashes that we've been getting this year. Last week, the potatoes were ready to harvest, so I pulled them out and I replanted green beans in this row to have another round of them later this summer. Another major change in the garden since last month is our bean tunnels have almost fully climbed all the way over to the other side. Those are our Cherokee Trail Tier beans, and they are doing great. I can hear the hum of pollinators over there going from flower to flower, so we should have a good crop of those later this summer. In this row we have our kale and chard. I harvested pretty heavy on the kale and chard yesterday, so it won't look quite as full as it had been. And then our okra does not get as tall this year because of the cool weather, but we are starting to get a little okra on there that I'm starting to chop up and freeze for some winter gumbos. So our provider green beans have lived up to their name yet again. They have produced bushel basket after bushel basket of green beans for us. And they have finished their first flush. We're probably going to get one more picking off of this with some of the few blossoms that I see on there. But I have marked the last few plants on the row to allow some of the pods to go to seed, so that we'll have seed to collect for next year's green bean patch. We've also marked some of our pickling cucumbers for seed. So we have these little flags that we tie to remind us that we are leaving these on purpose. So we want these to get big and yellow and get almost squishy before we harvest them to save the seed. But we really love this homemade pickles variety this year. We're hoping to continue growing it in the future because it didn't get too massive, honest, and didn't take over the garden, but produced prolifically. We're still getting more and more pickles even though I've finished canning the pickles for the year. This next row has our yellow beans and then our red drying beans on a trellis here. The yellow beans have just started producing just in time for our green beans to start going to seed. And then our red beans are just starting to set some pods that we'll be harvesting later in the summer for red beans for cooking chilies in the winter. Well, this bed right here behind me has been pretty much empty the entire season. We tried planting Anasazi beans here, we tried planting black beans here, we tried planting Jacob's cattle beans here, I've tried planting some straw flower seeds here, and really, for the most part, other than a couple of sunflowers at the end, nothing has grown in this. So we continue to be unimpressed with the hugelkultur system that we attempted to set up here. Maybe more our fault that we didn't have enough stuff on top, but I think we're going to probably this fall remove any of the wood pieces that we have left over and just go back to doing cardboard and compost on top of it. One thing that has done decently well in the hugelkultur bed over here is our watermelon and our cantaloupes. So I planted a couple seeds in here and they have been spreading out. I've been training them that direction since there's plenty of space for them to sprawl. So we're looking forward to having some of those in a month or two. Let's take a step up here into our urban flower terrace. It has been producing beautifully all throughout the month of June. The black-eyed Susans have been gorgeous. Our sunflowers are starting to come in. So I'll just take you around and show you some of the different beautiful flowers that we have growing in here. Some things have wrapped up, like our snapdragons. As soon as it started getting really hot, started wrapping up for some reason. Hoping when it cools down again closer to September, we might get another flush of flowers. But the sunflowers are gorgeous and the zinnias are really taking off. One new thing that you'll notice here in our herb terrace is we have started hooking up drip irrigation lines in here. We've gotten into the hot and muggy parts of the summer where the rain is not quite as regular as it was earlier in the season. So instead of being out here hand watering, we were getting the irrigation lines hooked up so that we can automate it a little bit more. So while they didn't get as tall as we were expecting them to, probably more to do with our soil and the cool weather that we had this year than anything else. But we've been really enjoying the Van Gogh Fantasy sunflower mix that Sunflower Steve has been growing in his experimental fields. We've had some really cool ones in here. I'll get some close-up shots of them so you can see them more closely, but they've been so much fun to see each one opening up. They're all different. It's just a fun surprise every time another one comes into flower. So some of these sunflowers have already come and gone and been pollinated. This is one of the first ones that bloomed for us and we wanted to save some seed from it. It was a pretty mixture of yellow and autumn rusty colors. And the goldfinches have been busy and been nibbling on everything. So we have these little mesh bags that we use when we're trying to save seed and we don't want the birds to get to something or we don't want it to get cross-pollinated. We put these little bags on there. So this one's covered up. We're letting the seed fully mature. We have another sunflower that's already gone to seed as well that we'll probably try and save at least part of the seed from that one as well because we want to keep growing all these fun different mixes of sunflowers in our garden in future years. Another thing that we've been working on in the garden this past few weeks is putting more mulch down. So we ran out of the mulch that we got from Chip Drop back in the beginning of June, and we weren't able to mulch the paths or even the beds here in our urban flower terrace and in our upper, more perennial bush area near the house. We did get another drop of wood chips here, so we've been filling it in as best we can. One thing that we did notice with all the heavy rain that we had with a couple of these summer thunderstorms was that we had a drainage problem, especially from the gutter that's in the house right here in front of me going down to the other terraces. So we now have the black drainage tile going through here. It stops right here in the middle of our herb terrace, so we have put in rocks that go all the way down there, and we're going to just put the wood mulch up to the edge of these rocks so that water can drain down, and we hopefully won't have a big puddle muddy mess every time it rains here. Another item we snuck into our garden here in June was our loofah plant. We love growing loofah, but I'm not sure they're going to really thrive this year. It was very cool, and loofah really love it hot, and they love a long, hot growing season. So we started them from seed, brought them outside, and it's just been so cool and cloudy and rainy that I don't know they're going to make it to maturity before we get to our frost date, but it's always fun to give it a try. We will definitely try again next year and see if we can get some more loofah gourd sponges growing. So last time we were doing a garden tour, I think I pointed out our little cluster of grapes, and it's still with us. Look at that. We're going to get a couple of grapes this year, which will be fun to sample and see if we want to add more of this variety of grape into our garden next year. I hope you enjoyed taking a walk around our hot and muggy garden here in July and taking a look and seeing what crops are doing well and not doing well this year. We hope your gardens are growing great, and we hope you are being able to preserve lots of delicious vegetables for the fall and winter to come. Happy growing, friends, and we'll catch you next time.